So we are here with ESPN college football analyst and Southlake Carroll's very own Greg McElroy. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Yeah, no, it's good to be back in the hometown of Dallas, right?
Yeah,
It's always fun. No, it's when I saw it at WFAA, I was like, all right, I know them. Channel 8, got them. A lot of these other stations I'm not quite as familiar with, but grew up watching y'all. So appreciate y'all having me.
yeah, it's great to hear. And kind of going off of that, you being growing up in the Dallas Fort Worth area, kind of the first question I want to ask is how has your perception on SMU changed as a football program? Obviously, we're talking about completely different eras of SMU football, but how does that kind of compare from back then, whenever you were getting recruited, to today?
Yeah, it's hilarious too, because the good news is I do have a little bit of practice in like having my perception changed completely. And the practice that I have is actually with Baylor. Because like when I was growing up, Baylor was terrible. And like when I was getting recruited by Baylor, and like a lot of us were getting recruited by Baylor, it was like, they won like one game in 3 years. Like, no, we're not going to Baylor. SMU was same thing. Like it's like, no way. Like SMU, they're not a football program. I know they were good in the 80s, but like no way. It's been super cool though to see a team like SMU and in this new era. Like nobody illustrates the changing of the landscape more than SMU. I mean, if you build it, they will come is ultimately kind of the way things have now gone in college football. And they said, hey, we don't care. Couple 100 million, no problem. You know, it's not really that surprising, having driven through University Park, that a couple 100 million and just lying in people's couch cushions, to be able to support a program. It's amazing. And I think it's really cool that all they wanted was access. Like they didn't guarantee championships. They didn't guarantee championship appearances. They didn't even guarantee a Power Five berth. They just said, hey, we will support the program and whatever it takes. If we can get in the Power Five, great. If not, no problem. They didn't guarantee playoff spots. All they did was say, we just want to fund the program. And with the changing landscape, we can now pay players and we can buy this and we can have this. And there's no reason why we can't be competitive. And it's been really cool to watch. And I'm really happy for them and their supporters. I think it's a proof of concept, and it's an acknowledgement of the changing landscape that we've had in college football the last few years.
Awesome, yeah. Kind of going off those changes and adjustments to a power conference. How do you rate or kind of analyze SMU's adjustment to the ACC? And has their success been more of a result of this, what people are saying, a weaker conference, which I don't buy that at all. Or is it because, SMU has been able to build something special in the years leading up to this moment? Kind of give us your thoughts on that.
I think it's a combination. I mean, you have to acknowledge that the ACC in general, is there more upward mobility in the ACC than there is in perhaps the SEC? Probably. I don't know for sure. I'm not sure any of us will know. It's a hypothetical. So I'm not sure it's really even the question that needs to be asked, but there probably is more upward mobility there than there is in the SEC, but still, you still got to do it. I do think they are somewhat the beneficiary of having played a little bit more manageable of a schedule than some of their other cohorts in the ACC. I mean, they have not had to play against the Miamis or the Clemsons in the regular season. Like it's been actually, I think, a really good welcome, like a good entry. And I think that they've learned too that, hey, anyone can get us. I mean, Duke's a 9-3 football team. They turn over 6 times. They still win. I mean, that's remarkable. That's a remarkable feat to be able to win like that. But I also think too, what a lot of us, those that evaluated SMU in the preseason, I thought that it was eventually the week in, week out grind that is a Power 5 conference schedule would take its toll. And they would start really well, and the first 2 months would be great. And then the last month, they'd probably come back to earth a little bit. That's what I anticipated. What I did not anticipate were this roster really avoiding significant injury at many different positions. That's significant. They haven't had a lot of adversity as far as injuries concerned. And they also have 30 seniors on the roster. That's a tremendous amount of senior leadership, guys that have played a ton of football that understand, okay, I got to take care of my body. I got to do this. I got to take care of this. And I think they know how to practice. I think they know how to do the things that you need to do to be able to put yourself in position to have success. So really optimistic about where this program's going. I do think this was a big year to break through because it is such a veteran roster, and it was your first chance to make, anytime you can make a first impression like this, mission accomplished. I think they've impressed everybody. Will it be more difficult in the years to come? Probably, but that's because people are going to be circling you on the schedule now, which is, I think, a testament of just how dangerous SMU's become.
Yeah, you speak on the veterans on the team and things like that. Who are some of those players that you're looking forward to watching on Saturday whenever they take on Clemson? And who do you think will really make an impact in that game?
Well, I mean, I think you can go to the obvious ones. Kevin Jennings has been really fun to watch. It's funny. I think everyone from the Dallas-Fort Worth area is super familiar with Southlake Cliff and the players that they've had over the years, and how many great players have come from there, and they just hadn't been able to really break through in the playoffs. Sometimes when we'd see them in high school playoffs and you see them in the brackets, like, all right, Southlake Cliff, they got a bunch of really good players, and Kevin Jennings, for him to take them to a state championship for the first time and as long as it was shocking. I didn't know that. I was like, surely Southlake Cliff won championships, right? Like, maybe I didn't watch that closely, but I had just felt like they were always a fixture in the UIL playoffs. But no, I mean, for him to elevate that program to levels they hadn't been to in a long time says an awful lot. And now he's doing it with SMU. The guy's just a gamer. I mean, he makes plays. There's some things that he does that are a bit unorthodox for sure. And I can understand why he was probably a little under-recruited. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy. His mechanics are a little bit hit and miss from time to time, but he just makes plays. I mean, there's some things that like he does that you just can't really explain. Like, how do you do that? Why do you do that? There's been a couple times where I've had that reaction watching 4 or 5 of their games. But he's a guy I'm really looking forward to watching in person. I can't wait to watch Brashard Smith. He's been electric. I remember watching him all the way back to his time at Miami. A guy that I always thought, like, man, why doesn't he get more touches? Why doesn't he get more opportunities? Now he's obviously taken the bull by the horns there at SMU and has done a great job and is one of the best, all around football players and as far as all purpose as you'll find. I think the receivers are all really solid. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's one. I think tight end's super underrated, and Hibner, I think he's very underrated. A guy that's really athletic, but not afraid to stick his nose in there some. And then defensively, I've seen him before, but Harrison Hunt, number 81, is a guy that can really destroy things for you offensively. He can really cause a lot of problems. So those are kind of some of the top line guys that I'm really excited to watch.
Awesome. Okay. And then, given that we're kind of entering, conference championship territory, and this is like very crucial parts of the season for a lot of teams out there with big games on Saturday and even today. Given that there are 12 teams taken in the college football playoff now, what does that expansion do for schools like SMU, who have maybe just taken that step up in a power conference or just a new conference in general? Kind of give us a little bit of thoughts on that.
Well, it's definitely interesting. To be honest with you, I don't know how it's going to go. Like, I mean, for all, like, your guess is as good as mine. Because I've never seen, we've all hypothetically wondered what would Boise do if they made the playoff. We have always wondered that. I mean, dating back to even when I was playing, in 2010, we were like, man, I'd love to have a chance to play Boise. I'd love to have a chance to play TCU at the time. Now TCU's in the Power 5, but they didn't have access back then. They could play in the Rose Bowl, but and they did. They could play in the Fiesta Bowl against each other, and they did. But they didn't often get cracks to go take on some of the bluest of the blue bloods. So I've always been fascinated by that. I do wonder too. I mean, we're expanding, and we've now gotten to the point where we are really considering including some flawed football teams. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, Miami, Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, these are flawed football teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if they get in, I'm not sure it would surprise that many people if they made a run, because they're talented. They're really talented. But they've been like a roller coaster this season, and that speaks to just how inconsistent they are. And to me, when you're inconsistent, you're flawed. So I think that's been a bit of an adjustment, because usually we're like last year when we were sitting here going into the playoffs and everyone's talking about Florida State versus Alabama versus Georgia and all that stuff. Like those teams weren't that flawed. You know what I mean? Like Alabama lost to Texas week 2, but at that point they'd won 11 straight and just beat Georgia convincingly in the SEC championship game. So it's like that team isn't flawed. The Florida State's undefeated, and they've beaten everybody on their schedule. But their quarterback their situation now is flawed because their starter got hurt. So they're flawed now, but their record isn't. And then Georgia, all right, they were great all year. They lost one game. Like, they probably have more talent than anybody. Like, we were evaluating great football teams, deserving football teams. Now we're evaluating teams that have kind of proven to be really up and down. So that's been an adjustment, but I think all of us will be fascinated to see how, if Alabama makes it in, do they make a run? Because if they did, I don't think it'd surprise anybody, but I think it'd also tick a lot of people off. You know what I mean? So yeah. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah. And, just kind of talking about those borderline teams that you mentioned, Alabama, South Carolina, teams like that are on the very outside looking in. If things were to go bad for SMU on Saturday, what do you think they should still get that chance in the college football playoff?
So I think the committee is going to look at it like this. I think the committee acknowledges that if they leave out SMU, that creates a pretty dangerous precedent. You know what I mean? And if they get beat by 40, all right, yeah, all right. That's tough pill to swallow. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's highly unlikely, but that's a different conversation. So let's just operate on the assumption they win a good game. It's a close game. It's a good game. It's a competitive game. And they just come up a little short. I think the committee acknowledges that if they were to knock SMU out and penalize SMU from making and participating in the conference championship game, that creates a really dangerous trickle-down precedent that could become a real slippery slope in the future. Because if SMU were to say right now, and they were to get to the stadium tomorrow and say, we're not playing. Like, we're not playing. We're in the field. So the only thing that can happen to us tonight is potentially bad. We're not playing. We forfeit. We'll give the championship to Clemson. They can make it in. We'll make it in. We're fine. Because I think at this point, like, the teams that they're being measured against are not playing. They're not putting anything on the line. So I think that's a little bit of a dangerous precedent. Now, do I think Alabama will get in? I don't know. I really don't. I think the committee acknowledges that if you're valuing the 13th data point when most teams aren't having to play that 13th data point, that can become a very difficult situation to justify. So I don't know how they'll handle it. I don't envy them for that situation if it does come to fruition, but I will be curious if it does happen, what the committee ends up doing.
All right, Greg. Well, that's all I have for you. I thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us, and hope you have a great broadcast on Saturday and enjoy the game.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.